I want you to get together.
I was actually just watching Shelley's new video over at There's No Place Like Home channel. I don't know if you guys have heard of her, but she's a bit of a well-known entity and name in the conspiracy world, talking about the millennial kingdom theory. I've had her on my channel. You can go and check that out. And I am going to be speaking with her and somebody else on Tuesday, so I'll be sending some links for that soon as well. Should be good fun. Should be a nice conversation. We're going to have a bit of a back and forth and discussion about all things millennial kingdom. But she made this video recently, which was quite interesting. I'll just share the screen with you guys. Screen share. There we go. As you can see here, it's the latest one, which I've just watched. There, 17 minutes, and it's called "Well, This Is Awkward," and it's quite fascinating because this came off the back. If you haven't already, guys, go subscribe to her channel. There's No Place Like Home here, Shelley's channel. And go watch some of her videos. Go check out the entire backlog because she covers some amazing in-depth things, and she's just thinking out loud like the rest of us, you know. And we have some great conversations on there. And again, she's just a lovely woman with a lot of questions and a lot of thoughts. Okay, so she has this thing called Question the Narrative, and this is actually in response to the backlash that's going around currently against the millennial kingdom theory. So, you know, the millennial kingdom already happening theory has been kind of around for maybe 3 or 4 years online, something like that. And it's been, you know, it's been growing over those 3 or 4 years and gaining momentum quite rapidly in maybe the past year or so. I jumped to the bandwagon quite late, to be honest, you know, but I felt like I couldn't really be quiet about this topic any longer. It was just gnawing away at the back of my mind, and I was like, I've got to talk about this, you know. I can't stop thinking about this concept. And Shelley's very similar, and she's been rolling with it for a few years as well, and it's gained so much traction now that it's getting the attention of those who are staunch, you know. No, this has not happened. Jesus has not come back and returned yet. This is the doctrine of devils type people, you know. This is evil. This is the great deception. Get stuff like that, you know. This is clearly just an evil work of Satan to detract people away and make them take the mark of the beast, or to make them have a false sense of security or something. And it's kind of none of those arguments hold any water to what we're actually saying. But most backlash has come recently from other channels discussing Preterism, you know, the specific movement created by a Jesuit, you know, maybe 200, 300 years ago. And someone did, a channel, not naming names, you know, or anything, did make a expose of Preterism, you know, showing how it's rooted and created by Jesuits, therefore we can't trust anything, you know. It was created as a counter-Reformation movement by the Catholics to go against the Reformation of the Protestants, you know, and it was in order to help the Catholic Church maintain their predominant power over the people by, you know, getting people rid of the idea that maybe they are the Antichrist system or something like that, or the beast, you know. And it's basically, it was made by Jesuits to hide the corruption of the Catholic Church or something like that. And, you know, I watched that show, and all I could think was, this is ridiculous. You haven't even covered at all the quotes from Jesus himself repeatedly saying, I am coming back very soon, not in 2,000 years. I'm paraphrasing there. I know I'm paraphrasing there. But there's far too... If I was to amalgamate all the quotes together, it was pretty imminent in his language. He was saying, I'm coming back. The time is nigh. The time is at hand. I come quickly. These things must shortly come to pass. Not, you know, this temple will be torn down very quickly, you know. You know, you will not have made it through all the cities of Israel before I return, you know. You will... this generation will not pass away before all these things are fulfilled. It was all very... And, you know, anyone who objects to these things has never mentioned the fact that this theory wasn't created by the Jesuits. These are the words of Jesus Christ himself. So what if a Jesuit formalized it, labeled it, and created a movement out of it? That doesn't mean they came up with it. That's not what happened here, you know. And it's kind of, if anything, that was probably their way of covering for themselves, because they knew people would expose them as evil eventually. And if people think this theory is created by evil people, then no one's going to take it seriously. Or so maybe it was like a long con situation. Who knows? But this is not created by a Jesuit. And even then, Preterism itself is a bit of a straw man to break down and debunk, because that's not what people like me or Shelley are really talking about. We're not espousing the doctrine of Preterism. Okay, sure, there are elements of preterist thought in what we're discussing, but even preterists don't necessarily consider there to be a physical millennial reign on Earth. Even some preterists or partial preterists would say, you know, only all the prophecies of Daniel, you know, and the I can't pronounce that, the discourse, you know, and the predictions of Revelation, you know, are partially done, and there's still the millennial reign to come in the future. You know, most preterists, you know, think the reign is a spiritual thing, and it's perhaps still to come in the future. What we're saying is something else. We're saying Jesus literally said he was about to return, not long after he originally died on the cross. It seems like he did. It seems like the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, yes. And it seems like the last thing we got in prophecy was that there'd be a millennial kingdom reign physical on Earth. And we're saying there seems to be evidence to say that did actually happen, and it's been covered up. And now we're living in the little season. Not all preterists talk about us living in the little season. They don't even mention that. It's not the same thing, you know, and a lot of these debunkers have just been terrible at debunking it. Beating up one straw man after another and not really talking about the fact that Jesus did say, I come back quickly. This is soon. This is happening in their lifetime for the people around him during that time, you know. Anyway, Shelley made a video here saying, well, this is awkward, because it turns out futurist dispensational doctrine, which says that, you know, the tribulation is at hand in the future and the millennial kingdom is yet to come, the predominant thought by most churches today, well, that also was created by a Jesuit. She lays out how, you know, you cannot say one thing out of one side of the mouth and not talk about the other angle, that both preterism and futurism are both doctrines of Jesuits. You know, so I think they're both technically wrong in some way, personally. And I've said this before, you know, and we need to find a new name for this movement, because it's not preterism what we're talking about here. It's not this old weird thing that's been around for a long time that everyone's saying we're talking about. We're not talking about the doctrine of preterism. This is something else. This is, I don't know how to explain that. People call it, I don't know, what's it, little seasonists, you could call us, rather than preterists or something like that. I don't know. This is the Millie Rain theory. You know, I don't know what this is exactly. It needs a new name. It needs something more formalized, I suppose. But it's certainly not preterism, which is the straw man that gets attacked, you know. And we are theorizing in a truly conspiratorial sense because of everything else that we've learned over the years while being in this realm, that it seems like history has been covered up. And what we call the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages was not a time of slowed down progression due to a dominant Christian worldview, which slowed down the progression of technology and people, you know, and was full of disease. And then it turns out it was actually incredibly prosperous, beautiful time to be alive, perhaps because Jesus Christ was ruling physically in the New Jerusalem and people were making pilgrimage to him regularly in a very literal physical sense. And some people do not like this. There are people out there who cannot bear that idea. And, you know, I read a lot of the comments on these things. I read a lot of the comments, and I've kind of made this point too, and I kind of tried to discuss it with JT follows JC on my channel with Joe, and when we had the conversation, it seems like money's the issue here. Okay, it seems like discussing these particular topics is offensive to many established Christian leaders because they perhaps wrote volumes and volumes of books discussing how tribulation's about to pass and Jesus is about to return. And this theory blows it all out of the water and probably makes them think, oh no, all my work is going to mean nothing now, you know. And some people go extreme in the comments and say they've spent most of their career making Jesus out to be a liar, as though he didn't say he was about to return imminently and we should be looking forward 2,000 years, to a distant time. And some people are not going to willingly accept the truth, if this is the truth, so easily, because they've invested so heavily in the lie, just like most of the people in the world, And again, I'm not saying these people can't change their mind. They probably will eventually. I think, to be honest, if they sincerely look into this concept with an open mind and heart as a child, reread the word from this perspective, they'll see that it actually fits a lot better than the mental gymnastic kind of doctrine they've had to jump through hoops to try and make sense in their minds for so long, such as the futurist doctrine. I think they'll find it's actually a lot simpler and a lot easier through the preterist view, I say preterist, through the little seasonist view, because it actually shows that Jesus wasn't a liar and he meant what he said when he says, I was returning quickly. And he did fulfill his promises. He did rule for 1,000 years, and Satan has been loose for a little season. And what is coming next is not the Great Tribulation, but it's the final great white throne judgment at the end of time. And if we need to figure out where we are in the timeline, we really do. Otherwise, we're open to some serious deception. And that isn't to say, that Satan isn't going to attempt to do what he did in the tribulation. There may be a mock mark of the beast, or signs and wonders in heavens and famines and wars and pestilences and all sorts of horrible things happening. He may try and orchestrate some kind of epic, blacking out of the sun and all these type of things using modern technology. He might try to recreate what happened in tribulation. But what comes after that will not be the millennial reign of Christ this time. It will be the final great white throne judgment at the end of time, after a great Gog and Magog war which surrounds the camp of saints. And this is the thing, a lot of people in my comments are telling me repeatedly, I was never told about the little season thing. Most of the pastors and these people who we go to in these church groups, they always get to that part in Revelations 20 and say, and this is probably just like, this doesn't really apply to us because this is some distant time in the future and it probably will only last like a week or two anyway, and then it's done, That's it. They move on and never discuss it. And, I was theorizing, and I was just thinking about this concept earlier, and, my brain does reel sometimes, and I forget what I'm trying to say, and I'm sorry if I ramble a bit on this one, but, these just the trail of thoughts I'm getting. And, I was reading Revelation 20. I was reading where it says, and Satan's loose for a little season, where he gathers an army, whose numbers are the sands of the sea, and they march up the broad plain of the earth and make war with the camp of saints, and then God brings fire down from heaven, and then it's final great white throne judgment. You read that, and it's such a quick summary of something which we know will take a long time, and it's probably far more complicated than what we were simply just told in these like 4 or 5 throwaway lines at the end of Revelations. Revelation, sorry, singular. And I couldn't help but feel this is like a Genesis 6 situation again, right at the beginning of the book. Never mind the end. Let's go right to the beginning of the book. And you read Genesis 6, and it says, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, after the sons of God came into the daughters of men and bore offspring. The same men became giants, mighty men of old, men of renown. And it's kind of like, there's more, something happened there. There's a huge epic story somewhere that wasn't really told in Genesis. Wait. It's like, whoa, back up a minute. Just wait a minute there, Genesis 6. What happened here with giants? Sons of God coming and taking wives of the daughters. What? What's that all about? But he just breezes past that and carries on the story, talking about the genealogies of Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, and then talking about the people of Israel and so forth. And it just goes on and on and on about genealogies and lineages, and it's kind of like it just leaves that as a footnote at the beginning and just espouses nothing extra on that extremely odd paragraph. Like, very odd thing to say, wasn't it? And it just moves on. And it's written in a way that assumes the reader already understands what that story is. The sons of God coming unto the daughters of men and creating giants. It assumes, we already know about that. This book is not about that story. If you want to hear about that story, then go and read the book about it. We all know what that is, and then you look into it and you find this thing called the Book of Enoch, which lays out in detail what Genesis 6 was talking about. And it's kind of like it fills in that gap, and it's written as though the reader would have already read that and would already understand that part of history, that ancient time before the flood. You already know about all of that, We don't need to go on for another 300 pages explaining that history. I'm sure you all already know, right? And then it just moves on to the next part of the story in Genesis. Well, Revelation 20 gives me that vibe. It gives me that vibe where it says, and then after the millennial reign is over, Satan is let loose for a little season. Moving on. It's kind of like, well, what happens during that little season? How long's a little season? What happens to all the people who lived during the millennial reign during that little season? Is there anyone left? Where are all these details we're missing? And I bet there's a book out there that we don't know about, that's been hidden from us, that explains everything. And that's why it's written like that in Revelation. I bet that prophecy was already given to John and the apostles during that time when he was writing that on the island of Patmos, so they say, And I bet it was already common knowledge when he says, when Satan's let loose for a little season. I bet they'd already discussed it. And Jesus had already explained thoroughly what's going to happen after the millennial reign to them. And it was already written down in a book, perhaps, and documented. And we're just missing that book. I bet that's what's happened. And like Enoch was kind of uncovered in the past 100 years and brought more in. And it says like Ethiopia's always had the Book of Enoch there as their canon and all these type of things. And it kind of all started coming more to light to us. And that part of Genesis 6 was more explained more thoroughly. And it's kind of, back then it was well understood knowledge anyway in basic history. But then it got lost to us and then we rediscovered it. I bet there's a book out there in a cave somewhere just waiting to be rediscovered that fills in the gap of the prophecy of the little season and what happens during that time. Now, this is just me speculating. This is a wild theory. But I get that vibe. I get the vibe from that throwaway comment in Revelations 20 that, the devil's let loose for a little season. And then, with no details of what happens in the little season, it's Genesis 6 over again. Oh, and the sons of God came and the daughters of men and created giants. And let's move on. It's like there's like 1,000 years of history there to that one statement alone about the giants, and Enoch fills it out. And there's maybe 250 to perhaps even 1,000 years of history for the little season we don't know about, with no details about what happened during that time that we're missing, and what we're supposed to live through during that time. That prophecy. I bet it's somewhere. I bet it is. Let's just check under the vaults under the Vatican, shall we, and see what they're hiding away. Who knows? Who honestly knows? But I just got that feeling reading that section. There's a. It's written as though the reader already understands that story. So, of course, you already know about Satan's little season and what happens during that time. We were told that years ago. We all know about that. But right now, I'm just focusing on what Jesus told me to tell you, which is specifically, about the coming tribulation that we're all about to experience. That's what that book was about. And maybe there is after Revelation, there's a little season book that should be in our canon, and Revelation wasn't the end. It isn't supposed to be the end of the book. Maybe there is a sequel book to the canon that we've been given, and there's more information about what it's going to be like to live during the millennial reign in more thorough detail that wasn't simply said in Zechariah, and all these type of things. Who knows? There's probably more somewhere hidden that maybe we'll never get now. That's the point. We've been thoroughly deceived in this time, and we're not supposed to know all the details, or that we're supposed to be in this time. That's the point. And I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you guys think of that random train of thought that just came to me there? Honestly, I was just thinking about it. And again, I get that weird vibe from it. I really do.
I want you to get together.